Hello, everyone. This is Adam Meister, the Bitcoin Meister, the Disrupt Meister. Welcome to This Week in Bitcoin. Today is July the 12th, 2019. One Bitcoin equals one Bitcoin. Value your wealth in Bitcoin. Strong hand, offended by selling. Bitcoin is the next Bitcoin. Be a unique beast, unconfiscatable, holder of last resort, world reserve crypto. Oh, and I'm here with a holder of last resort. And I've been looking forward to him coming back so long that I'm giving the whole show over to him. Only one guest on This Week in Bitcoin. It is Giacomo Zucco. Welcome back, Giacomo.
Happy to be back. Happy to be back.
Now you tweet a lot, and his Twitter is linked to below. Everything I talk about is linked to below, and my Twitter is Techbalt, TECHBALT. Now there's this one guy whose tweets are almost as big as Giacomo's tweets. His name is Donald Trump, and he's this dude who lives in America. He's from New York originally, I think Queens, and he tweeted out something. He's also president of the United States, from what I hear, and he tweeted out something about Bitcoin. So Giacomo is going to give us the worldwide perspective on it, but for clarity's sake and for the future, for people watching this in the future, I'm going to read out what President Donald Trump said here. I am not a fan of Bitcoin and other cryptocurrencies, which are not money and whose value is highly volatile and based on thin air. Sounds like, well, anyway, unregulated crypto assets can facilitate unlawful behavior, including drug trade and other illegal activity. Similarly, Facebook's Libra, and this is important, virtual currency will have little standing or dependability. If Facebook and other companies want to become a bank, they must seek a new banking charter and become subject to all banking regulations, just like other banks, both national and international. We have only one real currency in the USA, and it is stronger than ever. Both dependable and reliable. Okay. It is far the most dominant currency anywhere in the world. That is true. That's the one thing that's true. And it will always stay that way. It is called the United States dollar. So I do agree the United States dollar is the biggest regular currency in the world. Now, everything else that he said, no, I want to hear your opinion, Giacomo. Is this big news? People are saying this is so bullish for Bitcoin. What do you think?
So, well, in a way, I agree. So, first of all, everybody was waiting for this moment. I mean, Trump tweets about literally everything which comes to his mind. He has no filters, or apparently, at least, he acts as having no filters. So he discusses every stupid things, and that was kind of sad that the orange man, as opposers call him, wasn't discussing yet the orange coin, which is Bitcoin. So it was a moment written in the stars. It had to happen, and we may say that also the content is kind of bullish because, as you said, it mixes some truth with a lot of. Well, I don't want to call them lies because otherwise maybe a drone will come to my windows right now. But with a lot of, let's say, maybe not inaccuracies. Let's put it that way. So first of all, about the context of the tweet as I read it, the context is a context of feeling the need to push back against the Bitcoin narrative, which is stronger and stronger and more legitimate and more present. There was, I think it was Andreas Antonopoulos first, and I did it again in many of my presentation, was comparing Bitcoin perception to Kubler-Ross cycle of acceptance of a loss. So the first phase is denial. So Bitcoin doesn't exist. I don't talk about that. Bitcoin is a joke. The second is anger, which is Bitcoin is true, but is always Bitcoin exists, but it is bad, always and only used by terrorists and perverts. And then the other one is a bargain. So Bitcoin is here to stay, but I will present my own version. So my blockchain, my token, my crypto. And then there is depression, which is basically blockchain don't make any sense. Tokens are scams. So everything that we thought we could bargain to, it was a failure. And then there is acceptance, which is Bitcoin is Bitcoin. We went through the same phases with the internet. first the internet doesn't exist, then the internet is just a tool for scammers and perverts and terrorists, and then we will build our own internet. We, Microsoft, Intel, government, will build our alternatives. So that's bargain, then depression, and then finally acceptance. Of course, these cycles are not just one big cycles. They are made by little cycles, always bigger and bigger in importance and resonance. So the anger phase, which is what Trump is passing through now, is something that many people in the space and in the industry, many banks already pass it through. So Bitcoin doesn't exist. Bitcoin exists, but it's evil, and I will stop it. And Trump is now going that second phase. He still needed to go through the bargain phase, which is what Maduro already passed. So Bitcoin does exist, and I will do a better Bitcoin. So the Fed coin, we will do a better version of Bitcoin. Then depression, which is, oh my God, these tokens don't make any sense. And then finally acceptance. So I mean, it's a necessary step in the phase. So we're expecting for it. Looking at the content of what he tweeted, I think some things are interesting, like the fact that that Bitcoin is volatile is true. I mean, on that point, I think he has a point. Bitcoin is a volatile in a kind of good way. I mean, it's good to be volatile and going up year after year of orders of magnitude. It's not a bad kind of volatility, but still it is a volatility, and it could create some problems for some use cases. So about that, he is completely right. But Bitcoin is created out of thin air. Well, that's comical, because fiat money by definition is created out of thin air without any kind of effort, any kind of cost, any kind of constraint. The US dollar are created whenever a bureaucrat decides that US dollar are created, and Trump is always criticizing the Fed because they don't print enough dollars out of thin air. So this is really paradoxical, and also it facilitates crime. Well, starting from the point of view that everything we do since we wake up in the morning, it is a crime in at least one jurisdiction and at least one time in history. So drinking beer is a crime. Being a woman and driving is a crime. Escaping if you're a slave is a crime. Being a Jew is a crime. So everything we do is a crime at a certain point in history in some jurisdictions. So we have to be careful when we talk about facilitating crime, because sometimes we're talking about facilitating heroism or completely legit activities by people. But even if we consider crime as bad things, which they not always are, the nice thing is that there is one currency that is actually the number one currency used in crime right now, which is exactly the US dollar. So in a way, I mean, later on, as you said, Trump declared that Trump states that the US dollar is the most accepted, most important currency in this world right now, which is true. And that's also the reason why it is the currency which is used mostly by terrorists and all the bad things you can think of, perverts and scammers and violent people and warmongers and warlords and drug dealers and everybody else. So in a way, when the last sentence will not be true anymore, so when dollar will not be more widespread than Bitcoin, then maybe his other sentence will become true. So Bitcoin will be mostly used for crimes. Bitcoin will not be mostly used for crimes, but criminals will mostly use Bitcoin. Right now, they mostly use US dollar. Also, it's very interesting to look into the sentence about Libra. So many people were thinking that, like, since Facebook just decided they are going to violate money monopoly, then they will just do it. But we already passed through this history with the beginning of PayPal, X.com, with eGold, Liberty Reserve. A lot of people tried to compete with the Fed using centralized services, and they always ended up in the same way. Either they give up competition, like Linden Dollar or PayPal, or they go to jail, like eGold or Liberty Reserve. The end is always that, and Trump is just reminding these people that this time is no different.
I got to say something here about the Libra part. I'm glad you brought that up. I thought you were going to leave that out. I think that this tweet was mostly brought on by his dislike of Facebook. I really think that played a major role in this. And I have no idea if he knows all the difference between Libra and Bitcoin, but I think that this Libra thing is what woke him up. And he does not want Facebook to have their own coin because politically, the people at Facebook are not aligned with him. So I think this is what triggered all of this. This is my analysis on this. I haven't heard anybody else say this yet. And I'm really glad you did bring that up. And so do you think they're going to be able to get away with it? Do you think they're going to be able to progress? We have hearings coming up next week, I think, in the United States about Libra. And I'm going to ask you some more about Libra too. But just on that, with the bottom line, will Libra be able to progress?
So I don't think neither that Libra will be able to progress as they described in the white paper. So progressively decentralized alternative to the US dollar without the bank equivalent KYC, AML. But not only I don't think they will get away with that. I don't think they even believe or plan to get away with that. I think that, there is people inside the Libra consortium who is working for PayPal. And PayPal started exactly with that dream. Peter Thiel and Elon Musk started with the dream of a currency for the internet, which is outside the regulation of the Federal Reserve and let's say the financial regulators for KYC, ML, and any other kind of stuff. And they know that it was not possible back then, and it won't be not possible right now. So I don't think they even think they are going to do that. I think that they know marketing-wise that if they were just going to announce Facebook is going to compete with Alipay, the kind of exposure, the kind of newsworthiness, the kind of visibility of the news will have been little. So instead, if they say Bitcoin is creating, Facebook is creating a new cryptocurrency, then the kind of visibility and discussion around it is infinite. And so they did that not because they think they can go around the Federal Reserve monopoly or going around KYC prisons. They can't. They already said, basically, Facebook representatives and Libra consortium representatives already said that they are not going to do that in India because you can't, not in Iran because you can't, not going to do in any country which is sanctioned by the United States. You will have to do KYC. It's already written. They cannot do what it was not possible to do for PayPal. One may say that maybe one thing is different. You can say Facebook is now more powerful than PayPal was in 1999, which is true. But also you have to consider that the US government and the governments in general, they are more aggressive about money, way more than they were in 1999. So if government agency put a Liberty Reserve and Eagle people in jail back then, imagine right now they are not less aggressive. They are not more liberal about that. They have to maintain negative interest rates, which means that they have to ban cash whenever they can, because otherwise people can exit in cash and they can blow up the negative interest rates economy. So the governments are more serious now than 20 years ago about banning tax havens, enforcing KYC, all the things that happen, like Patriot Act and everything. So maybe Facebook is stronger than PayPal, but the government desire to control money is way stronger than it was at the end of the 90s. And so I think the end is the same, and I think Facebook people know that perfectly.
Okay. Well, I would think Facebook has some game plan, some end game, and some tie-in with some of these political people, and probably people who are not on Trump's side. So it will be interesting to see how this evolves. First of all, pound that like button, everybody, if you're enjoying this, and I'm loving it. You mentioned that in the last 20 years, governments have become stricter, and they do have an excuse they go to when we're talking about laundering money. They talk about terrorism, and of course, in 1999, we had not experienced 2001 yet. So that is a tremendous tremendous difference, and something that you know, I think he even brought up terrorism in that comment. So that was not a calling card that could have been used back then. Now, with all that being said, Facebook, I think they're going to end up with something here. Whatever they end up with, do you think this will be good for Bitcoin? And do you think it will help onboard people to Bitcoin?
So I think they will end up with like a PayPal competitor, but radically different. That's why I called it an Alipay competitor, because PayPal would just PayPal, while Facebook, like Alipay, they are creating a payment system which is working in symbiosis with something huge, which is the social graph of Facebook. So it will. I will not think it will end up into nothing. I think it will possibly end up in something big, but mostly big for that sector, not as big as Bitcoin. So what I think is that it will be the impact on Bitcoin will be kind of like this. Super short term, it has been bullish because they basically promoted the whole Bitcoin stuff to people that didn't even know about that. So the very short term effect was creating some visibility and some exposure to the idea. The medium term, I think it will be kind of bearish, because many use cases that could have used Bitcoin now, they could just go to Facebook and be served better than on Bitcoin. But then long term, it will be bullish again, because any interesting use case that will be possible on Libra somehow was already possible with the PayPal, because by definition, government regulation will catch up, and so anything you can do at Equilibrium or Libra, you could do that the same on PayPal. And everything you can't do, which includes saving your money from inflation and stuff like that, or maybe being paid if you are a woman in Afghanistan, or exporting money from Venezuela, everything you couldn't do with PayPal, then you will discover you will not be able to do that with Libra at the end, because Libra will have as a collateral fiat money, so they will follow inflation completely. They will be KYC, they will stop at border. So eventually, in the long run, you will have to get back in Bitcoin, but with the major improvement, which is basically that. So right now, when people faces Bitcoin, they are facing digital gold, and they may have two kinds of let's say skepticism about Bitcoin. One is about digital, so a typical thing. I mean, if it's not something I can touch, like paper or metal, it's not real money. So they can distrust digital per se, or they can distrust gold, like I want inflation, I want KYC, I want this kind of stuff. So when the people start using digital more, even if it's Libra is not digital gold, it's digital banking basically, they will have less and less skepticism about the digital part, and all the kind of struggle will be focused on: do you want digital bearer instrument, unprintable, ininflatable, unconfiscatable gold, or do you want empty promises by governments that can be confiscated and will be over-regulated, and you will have to ask for permission every time you move them. So at the end, I think it will be a positive effect. That said, I wanted to add something about political alignment, if I can, which is I think is very interesting. You say that Trump dislikes Facebook, but I'm not sure if Trump knows or not that Bitcoin is actually being analyzed very, very deeply by a lot of Trump supporters, that since many social media platforms are biased let's say pro-Democrat, or in a way anti-Trump, they have been deplatformed since a while. So think about Gab, or think about I don't know, Alex Jones, and they tend to be, I mean, they are a complex galaxy, but mostly they are pro-Trump. So Trump, I don't know if he doesn't know or he doesn't understand yet, then some part of his let's say of his political side, or things which are close to his political side, are right now being cut off traditional centralized services, and they are switching to Bitcoin-inspired, Bitcoin closed, or Bitcoin, let's say Bitcoin contiguous decentralized services. So that's like Patreon and Telecoin, etc.
Yeah, I think you're making a great point there. I don't think he knows the difference. I think his anger is so much at Facebook that he just lumped Bitcoin in. I don't think but he's, oh, it's a cryptocurrency. They're all bad. I think it would be great if someone in his administration understood and did tell him exactly what you just said, that a lot of it's mostly he knows that conservative people are being targeted a bit more than liberal people on social media and being shut down. And the next step in the learning process is a way around that censorship is Bitcoin. Thus, you shouldn't be tweeting out Bitcoin and Facebook in the same tweet as the same thing. I don't think he gets it. And maybe when he does get it, we'll be able to tell, because he'll just be ripping on Libra and talking about how they need a bank license and all this, and forget about the Bitcoin and terrorism thing. Because if he keeps going on the Bitcoin and terrorism thing, it'll alienate some of his supporters who are going to need to rely on that. And we're actually going to talk about that in a second. Some of what these banks are doing. But wait, did you have something else to say about that? I didn't want to cut you off.
Yeah, no, just that I'm a little bit skeptical. I mean, this is very optimistic, but the fact is that I only said a part of the truth. So I say that Bitcoin is mostly right now explored by right-wing people who are the platform, which is conservative people, which is true. But if you have a complete understanding on Bitcoin, then you know that yes, it does allow Trump supporters and conservatives to be funded maybe with alternatives to Patreon, etc., or to pay for server like Gab. But it also does allow stuff like sending money from Mexico to the USA or vice versa, violating China restriction on capital. So Trump is not like a libertarian. So I think that if he understands Bitcoin, he will understand that he will go against big tech. So big tech is his enemy, but he also go against some of his typical protectionism mantras. So I'm not so optimistic that he will love it. Maybe, I mean, right now he's a president of the United States. So the United States are in big trouble if Bitcoin wins, because they cannot print money anymore and they cannot confiscate money easily anymore. But maybe a Donald Trump, which is not a president anymore, but it's just an old rich guy with divorce problems and with lawyer problems with ex-wives. I mean, that kind of guy could understand Bitcoin better than a president of the United States.
Very good points. And I also wonder what his upcoming ex-wife will, how much she'll sue him for in the future. Once he's on to the next, he'll be on to someone new in the future, everyone. You better believe that. But you bring up a great point about remittances and why he might hate Bitcoin. Because I'm sure at this point, with all his dealings on the border, that he seriously considered just cutting off making it illegal to sell for non-citizens to send money back to Mexico. And then maybe someone told him, well, people are going to be able to get around this with Bitcoin. So maybe you bring up an excellent point that although that's the beauty of Bitcoin. Your worst enemy can help them, it can help you. And that's why that's why anyone should be into it. And maybe Trump should put that all together, but he might consider Bitcoin an enemy because it does help people sending remittances back to Mexico. And that is that'll be a huge part of his campaign. Shutting down the border, et cetera, et cetera. So, I mean, maybe he's thinking a couple steps ahead why he's got to go against Bitcoin, and he actually isn't confused about Libra and Bitcoin. I want to bring up one thing about Libra that you talk about it being PayPal. In order for Libra to be a success, I think it has to be bigger than PayPal. I mean, Facebook has this tremendous network. They got to be able to scale this thing so they're bigger than PayPal. Do you think they'll be able to be bigger than PayPal?
It's not a certainty because, I mean, the fact that you have a bigger network effect in something doesn't translate to a bigger network effect in something else. Think about Google. Google already had the home page of basically every human being on the internet. And when they tried to launch their own social network twice, they failed miserably. So they had a huge network effect. They tried to step out of their comfort zone. I mean, Google Plus was technically not even so bad, but the point is that nobody cared. And even if it was in the home page on everybody, nobody switched to that, and everybody stayed on Facebook and Twitter. So will the fact that they can basically gift a PayPal equivalent to everybody, which some enhanced feature like social graph payment, so pay your friends. I mean, they can they be better than PayPal as a service? Yes, definitely. Do they have strong assets that PayPal didn't have? Yes, for sure. For example, when the government asks PayPal to do complete KYC of people, PayPal is in big trouble because now they have to KYC everybody. But Facebook, when the government asks Facebook to KYC people, they already know more stuff about many people than the government itself. So the cost to KYC is not that they will not KYC us, they will still do it, but the cost will be lower. So Facebook has got assets that PayPal didn't have, but that doesn't automatically translates into like a bright future necessarily. We will see probably.
All right, and on this topic, one last thing. I know you love to talk about altcoins, and this isn't even a real altcoin. But who's next? If Facebook is a FANG company, was it Facebook, Apple, Amazon, Netflix, Google? Who's next with this own private coin competitor to PayPal? Or do you think that another company is not going to try this? Is it going to be Google, or do you see Google tried social media and failed? Do you think they'll try cryptocurrency?
I think that Google already. So again, I don't really think that that Facebook is so naive to really try cryptocurrency. I think they are using the cryptocurrency narrative to get more visibility to an operation which is basically payments. So in these regards, Apple and Google are already there. They entered payments before cryptocurrency was an interesting marketing narrative, or without actually fully leveraging the cryptocurrency narrative. So Apple and Google are already there. You have Apple Pay and you have Google Pay. They may try now to pretend to have a cryptocurrency, but the point is that they already launched that kind of market aggression, while Facebook waited to enter into the payment situation, and then they waited until a moment in which a cryptocurrency narrative was interesting. What we could think about is basically, right now there could be something completely different from those companies you mentioned that could also try this kind of rhetoric. We will see. In a way, Amazon is closer to cryptocurrency than Facebook right now, because Amazon has the Amazon credit, basically the Amazon Turk mechanical Turk credits. There is a lot of strange things in Amazon coupons. There is a very rich and strange economy, which is closer to a legal arbitrage than I think Facebook will ever be. So probably Amazon is even further forward in this kind of endeavor.
All right. So that's a good take on this. Do you see on the side? I just typed in
the question.
Yeah. So read that off and answer it if you can answer it.
Well, so the question is, they would like to know if I ever had any prima facie heuristics about Bitcoin that were proven wrong. So what is a prima facie heuristics? This comes from the extended explanation of my take on Bitcoin maximalism. In Riga, in Balticon in Badger 2018, I gave this presentation, which was mostly tongue-in-cheek, was mostly semi-sarcastic, and I said I gave the four universal truths. One was everything which is not Bitcoin is a scam, and everybody pushing people to change Bitcoin is a scam, and everybody pushing people to spend Bitcoin is a scam, and we should not be nice with scammers. Then in a longer presentation that you can find on Google in a Bitcoin embassy in Ulster, Switzerland, I gave the full presentation and explained that these are not really truths, of course, and I gave a lot of counterexample. For example, like Tor and BitTorrent are not Bitcoin, they are not scam, and spending Bitcoin, if you are in Venezuela, you don't have anything to spend, is not scam, and changing Bitcoin to add SegWit is not scam, and being nice to scammers is actually okay, and I do that all the time. So these are not literal statements about reality, but these are what is called prima facie heuristics. That means that if you use, there are somehow equivalent to you shouldn't trust a Nigerian prince when they write you emails. What does that mean? That there are no actual honest Nigerian princes? Yes, they are. But when you receive an email from a Nigerian prince, your first, your default position should be he is scamming me, and then you have to prove that default position wrong. So if the question is if one of these prima facie heuristic was ever proved wrong to me, the answer is yes, but all the time, even before I assumed this heuristic, they were already proven wrong in some specific cases. For example, as I said, many projects that are not Bitcoin, including many open source decentralized protocols like against Git. Git is not Bitcoin, it's not a scam. And many cases in which you spend Bitcoin, I spend Bitcoin to buy my VPN because I don't want the VPN provider to know about my credit card. So there are a lot of cases in which you spend Bitcoin, and a lot of cases in which changing Bitcoin is actually good. So yes, these heuristics are proven wrong with some kind of nuances in some specific cases. But if you use these heuristics, you are better off than if you use the opposite heuristic, which is basically I believe everything, which is, I believe cryptocurrencies in general. I believe any new idea. I follow any new idea about changing Bitcoin, or I cheer when people is pushing spending as a narrative, or he cannot be a scammer because he's a nice guy. So the answer is yes, heuristics are made to be broken, but they are still useful. Nigeria is a tribal society, which there are a lot of, there is a tribal society in Nigeria, and a lot of chiefs are actually called prince. So you can go to Nigeria and meet an honest Nigerian prince who is not scamming you. So you can prove the heuristic wrong, but still, when you receive an email from a Nigerian prince proposing you to enlarge your sexual organs, be skeptical as a default position.
Sounds like the exception proves the rule type of situation.
Yeah, precisely. I can give another more technical example. People says all the time, you don't cryptographers. They say you don't roll out your own cryptographic derivative primitives. So you don't roll out your own crypto. This is a very good rule. Of course, if everybody was adopting this rule literally, people will never ever invented a CDSA or Schnorr or any kind of cryptography. Somebody had to roll out their own crypto. But as a default, be skeptical of this claim. So yeah, what you said is right. Is that there are a lot of exceptions, but the rule is the correct, skeptical, critical, standard default position.
All right, now we're going to talk about why you shouldn't be worried about Litecoin. Why not Litecoin, excuse me. Pound that like button. Like network. You got me talking altcoins now, man. Yeah, he can tell you why to worry about Litecoin, but why not to worry about Lightning Network? But before we get into your Lightning Network thing, because everybody always wants to hear about Lightning Network, there was a question, and thank you for that question. Roman asked that question, and Ken Bozak, thank you for the $2 in the super chat, dude. Pound that like button. A guy named Anthony Monero, who I think is I'm butchering his name, he's from France, I think. He's in the chat, and he says, and he brings up Tether, and that's why I want to hear, people are always worried about Tether bringing down Bitcoin. That's something people worry about. So here's the question. Trump is going to use Tether case to crush the entire crypto system, which means it will crash the Bitcoin price sooner or later. Sooner or later, Bitcoin will rise again, but expect a huge crash very soon. Okay, so this is combining a lot of topics here, but I do want to hear your Tether take. Will the government go after Tether at these hearings eventually? So far, it's only the state of New York that's going after Tether. Will the United States government the federal government go after Tether and use it as a way to hurt Bitcoin? Or is that even possible? I don't think it's possible to tell. That's my take on this. So if Tether does get taken down one of these days, will it bring down Bitcoin?
So a lot of sub questions in this question. So the first is the U.S. government going to take down Tether? So I honestly think they are going to try to take it down, because Tether is basically an explicit attempt at regulatory arbitrage around the limitations and the barriers that the U.S. government posed to any circulation of dollar-denominated value. So Tether is a useful tool for traders in order to avoid Bitcoin volatility when they want, or in order to onboard and outboard exchanges going around typical KYC restrictions. So Tether is a useful tool, and I think the U.S. government as a whole eventually will try to shut this kind of stuff out. What I will not be so certain about is that they succeed, because they managed to take out the PayPal effort at competing with the dollar or Liberty Reserve, but I think that the Tether guys especially proved to be particularly resilient. So as a model, I think that Tether is eventually inevitably somehow fragile, because what I always say is that think about the fractional reserve problem. You have even if you trust the Tether company, and given recent development, I think there are good reason to kind of trust them, because they behaved in a kind of creative but fundamentally sound way. So, but even if you trust them not to inflate the number of Tethers, still you have to trust the banks that they are not doing fractional reserve on the amount of dollars that Tether is put in there. And if they are doing full reserve, for certain they're not doing that with gold or physical cash. So they will be basically using some kind of bonds or government bonds of some Caribbean state, which itself can fail. So Tether represents a chain of counterparty risks together, and it's fragile. So I think they will try to destroy it, and I'm not sure they will manage it, because the guys are really they're smart. If you really read all the history of Tether and Bitfinex in general, these guys are really smart. So I hope they resist. I really hope they can stand a government attack, and I'm not sure they can't. In the long run, of course, we need Bitcoin, because this kind of operation cannot be sustainable in the very long run. If we could have a Tether which works perfectly across generations, we will not need Bitcoin at all, because we will just use a US dollar Tether. Maybe we just ask Tether company to stop inflating the base, and now we have sound money and dark money, censorship resistance. So obviously, in the long run, it cannot work. So the third question actually is, would taking down Tether take down Bitcoin? I don't think that's the case, either short term or long term. Long term, of course, Bitcoin doesn't care. Short term, I don't think there is this death spiral dynamic. If you go to, not more than Mt. Gox did. So did Mt. Gox failure destroy Bitcoin? No. Did it depress the price for a while? Yeah. So is Tether closing down as a news depressing the price? Maybe. Good for us. We will buy the dip. It's not really a fundamental problem. It can be. It cannot reverse a long-term trend. It can be the trigger for some short-term correction eventually.
All right. And again, remember, if and when it gets taken down, there are other stable coins that people could just jump to. And obviously it's the best of the stable coins, but still it's not the end of the world. We shall see. And I do agree. These guys are smart. They've been able to hang on this long. So it's something to keep an eye on. I do not worry about it now, but that was a question, and people are going to keep bringing it up for quite some time. Now, when we're talking about not worrying about Tether, you gave a talk about stop worrying about the Lightning Network. Why should we stop worrying about the Lightning Network? Tell us what you talked about.
So the title, you can find it. I think right now it's pinned on my Twitter profile. So if you go on Twitter, Giacomo Zucco, you find it pinned timeline. Basically, the title of the talk was an idea of the organizer of the Fulmo Lightning Hack Days, Jeff, and it's a quote of Stanley Kubrick movie, the Dr. Strangelove. So how I learned to stop worrying I love the bomb. And it is how I learned to stop worrying I love the lightning. And the content of the talk goes basically like that. Isn't it strange that everything that we are so obsessed about in Bitcoin, which is being slow, secure, safe, conservative, maybe even toxic toward changes. So my second rule in Riga Maximalist presentation was any attempt to change Bitcoin is a scam, which is very, very toxic. So why does not the same apply to Lightning? Because in Lightning, every new proposal, every new change, like L2, atomic multipath, everything new is cheered as something instead super welcome and super enthusiastic. And also in Bitcoin, we say that you should hodl. And my third rule says that every attempt at pushing people to spend is a scam. And there is also a great article by Goldstein, Michael Goldstein, which is everyone is a scammer, which is a great article in the Nakamoto Institute, which is basically everybody wants your Bitcoin and everybody urging you to spend Bitcoin is just because they want to get your Bitcoins. So why do we switch from this kind of narrative in Bitcoin to a narrative in Lightning where everybody wants to spend money on Lightning? Like you have video games in which, in order to move the character, you have to spend satoshis or fractional satoshi for every single move. That's crazy if you compare that to the hodl meme. So the point of my talk is that Lightning Network, unlike the base layer of Bitcoin, lives on a different social layer. And the point of my talk is that some very, very low level deep social layers, they require mostly stability, conservative approach, adversarial thinking, almost paranoia. They need toxicity. They need to be aware of attacks. They need an immune system. They need safety first rules. They need mission critical attention. While layers on top of that, they typically aren't that way, and they welcome more like fast evolution, competition, different implementations, and new ideas, and spending small amounts. That's basically because on Bitcoin you have basically you move large amounts, and you have a base layer which includes the monetary policies. So if people messes up with the base layer, we are in big trouble for probably for decades, if not even longer. So the lower level is robust, but it's not anti-fragile. We cannot really mess up with that a lot. We cannot we can be tortured or kidnapped for our Bitcoin, so we shouldn't just go around lightly talking about that. There is a state government agencies. They could infiltrate the development. They could try to push bad ideas into Bitcoin. They could try to make it more centralized in order to stop it. So there are a lot of reasons to be super worried at the base layer and to use as a prima facie heuristic a very, very toxic heuristic, like everything is a scam. We want to, safety first. While in Lightning, we don't have the same constraints, because even if the entire Lightning networks now fails, we can still take Bitcoin. The monetary base is still there. The monetary inflation is still untouched. The fundamental blockchain dynamics are still safe. And we can build a new, better second layer, even assuming that the first layer, the Lightning Network layer, collapsed completely. So we can mess up with Lightning. And of course, it's always better not to break things. But if we break Lightning, that's not a game stopper. If we break Bitcoin, that's could be the end of our experiments for centuries. So on Lightning, you can finally, since the amounts are small, like micro satoshis, you can finally spend and have fun spending and not hodling anything. You can have fun introducing new things. For example, I work with some other people on the RGB spectrum idea about assets. So we hate assets on the main chain. We hate assets on layer one. We always say that assets can be problematic and they can mess up incentives and they bloat the blockchain. While we love assets on top of Lightning because now you can experiment. We are skeptical about changes on protocol, but we are not skeptical about the new bolts and new changes. Also because in Lightning, Lightning is not a global consensus system. So in Lightning, you can change what your Lightning node does without affecting the consensus of other nodes. You can have different policies for your node, your channels, your partition of the network. While on Bitcoin, when you change the consensus, you basically you mess with other people's money. So the second layer is something that, in a way, some scam coiners or altcoiners, they were searching for something that Lightning finally provides for, which is basically fast, crazy evolution. So I remember where people pointed me, it was probably 2 years ago, some guy showed the MetaMask Ethereum browser extension to me. And I said, I mean, this is very cool because, I mean, as a user experience, MetaMask was great. And so I started to talk with some Bitcoin developers and I said, I mean, guys, I know that you are focusing on security, but from a UX point of view, you should learn from them. I mean, this is something usable. And they started to list to me all the reasons that that's actually a very bad idea, because that will incentivize people to put money at serious risk because JavaScript, browser extensions, and this and that, and the way you store the seed and the way you backup, and they were right. But now on Lightning, if you look at the Joule browser extension, that's pretty much like MetaMask, maybe not yet as cool from a UX point of view, but similar. And nobody has any objection about that, because on Lightning there is just a very tiny amount of money on your channels. It doesn't affect consensus, so you can mess up, and finally you can attract less security-minded and more UX-minded developers.
Wow, that is a great way of describing Lightning Network. A place where you don't have to worry, because if it breaks, it's not the base layer that's breaking. Bitcoin will be fine. It's not a lot of money at risk. People aren't putting a lot out there. I like it a lot. This is a great way of looking at things, and it'll be a great way for a counter argument for everyone saying, all the people attacking Lightning Network, all the altcoiners attacking Lightning Network, and you can just say, so what? If it breaks, it breaks. We still have Bitcoin. It's not the end of Bitcoin. It's the end, and it's not, and hopefully it won't break. But and then you can say, it's a place for experimentation. There's so many people out there that say Litecoin is the place for Bitcoin people to experiment. No, do it on the Lightning Network. A different light, but a second layer solution. So it provides. I like this take. I like this take a lot, and I thank you for sharing this today. It gets me even more enthused about Lightning Network. And yeah, you're right. MetaMask is kind of cool with Ethereum. It is, but that's on the base layer of Ethereum. If something went wrong, it would be on the base layer there. If the MetaMask version on Lightning Network goes wrong, so what? But yeah, excellent points here. Now we're getting toward the end of the show, and I was going to talk about SunTrust Bank, but we'll talk about that in another show. I think I referenced that earlier, but I did want to. You retweeted. Where is this tweet that you retweeted about? Okay, you and I don't know if you agree with this, but I just want to get your take, because you did retweet it. Simple fact: only Bitcoin matters. Now I know you agree with that. Another fact: Monero is technologically super interesting, but from a higher level view, sadly, it is irrelevant.
Yeah, I retweeted that today, and that I completely agree with that take. I'm the more. I mean, I have to admit, in 2013, I was very open to scam coins. Because I didn't understand something that I understand now. So I was basically, before I was skeptical about Bitcoin. When Bitcoin destroyed my skepticism, I suffered the pendulum effect, and I went from skeptical to naive. So Before I didn't believe in Bitcoin, and after for a while I did believe in everything. So it was like researching Ripple, researching NXT, and I didn't even understand that economically speaking, this proliferation doesn't make any sustainable sense. So I was very open, and then when I started to understand that it was mostly now the technical term would be probably I cannot say it on your channel. So it was mostly snake oil. Yeah, snake oil. I was thinking to another animal, not a snake, but okay. So it was mostly snake oil. And now I started to use an heuristic in which every altcoin by definition is mostly uninteresting until I'm proven wrong. And I have to say that with Monero, I have been proven wrong because true. I mean, Monero has a lot of problems, trade-off, difficult choices. For example, the hard fork every 6 months is good for evolution, but it's super bad for political independence because then you centralize around. You never ossify and you centralize a development team because you need social coordination for every hard fork. Then using base layer obfuscation means that you are giving up scalability entirely because global consensus is very bad at scalability already. If you also obfuscate global consensus with ring signatures and confidential transactions, you are basically giving up scalability, and you are making the trade-off between validation and spending way worse. And also there is a strange trade-off between security and privacy. Like the more you go through privacy, the more you risk from the security point of view, because you can only be perfectly hiding or perfectly binding, and there are a lot of problems between. I mean, you could hide inflation in Monero, and you couldn't hide that in Bitcoin. So there are a lot of sacrifices. But that said, the way that Monero community behaved was scientifically and sociologically very interesting, and I've started to grow to respect that. Even some things I didn't know, like the way they basically work in a way that you cannot have SPV and you have to have your full node. That's way more secure. That's way better than what Bitcoin did with Bloom filter. So some little things in Monero are even a good example for the future development of Bitcoin. That said, unfortunately, I'm skeptical that you can. I mean, maybe today in the short run you can use Monero as part of your privacy procedure. So use CoinJoin, use Join Market, use Wasabi, use full nodes, use not address reusing, use Tor, and you also use Monero as part of your hygiene, privacy hygiene. But in the long run, liquidity is the king, because when you have more liquidity, you also have more anonymity set. What I mean is this: let's assume there is an altcoin with 10 users and a ring signature so beautiful that it will anonymize between all the users. But still, you have 10 users. So even with the perfect obfuscation of sender, your anonymity set is 10. On the other hand, you have Bitcoin with 10,000 users. So even if the anonymity set of the single Bitcoin transaction is bad, the anonymity set of a coin join in Bitcoin will be better than the anonymity set of the ring signature parties in Monero. So of course, then there is amount, there is a lot of discussion to have. But in general, the point is that, so let me phrase it like this. The reason the typical Litecoin use case doesn't make any sense is this: I want to save money, so I want to give us some security to save some money. So I'm using Bitcoin as a store of value. You are the merchant. You are using Bitcoin as a store of value. Since I was to save money on fees, what I do is to buy Litecoin, give you Litecoin, and then you have to buy back Bitcoin. But we are not saving money because we are using a fee to move Bitcoin from cold storage to an exchange, because you don't store your Bitcoin on exchange. Then you pay the market fees to buy Litecoin with your Bitcoins. Then you pay the Litecoin fees. Then the merchant will have to pay the market fee and the Bitcoin fees back to cold storage. So it doesn't make any sense. With Monero, there is something weaker but similar, because I want privacy. I use Bitcoin as my store of value, of course, in cold storage. So I need to move Bitcoin from the cold storage to some market, maybe decentralized market, but still the order book is a liquidity limitation, and so the anonymity set of people exchanging in that moment will never be infinite. Even if you have a DEX or atomic swap, that doesn't help, because the point of the anonymity set is the liquidity. So I have Bitcoin, I have to buy Monero, I have to send you Monero to stay anonymous, and now you have to sell Monero for Bitcoin and get that Bitcoin back to your store of value. You see, that doesn't work. Either this kind of money can be also a store of value long term, or the friction to switch to the privacy coin and back will reduce the liquidity and the anonymity set by definition. So you have to hope that Monero, in order to be usable, also has to become a reliable long-term store of value, which I think it can't. So I agree with this tweet. What they're doing with Monero is great from a scientific point of view, and it's mostly ethical, even if I would have preferred a sidechain or a proof of burn or something. But I mean, they're behaving in an ethical way, and scientifically they are very interesting, but yet it cannot work, because what matters is liquidity, because liquidity also creates unlimited set.
All right, that was a beautiful explanation of that tweet. So yes, it is in long term. It is irrelevant. I mean, that's a very short way of saying it. You fleshed out what was meant by that term there. Now, I want to. You brought up something obfuscation, privacy at the base layer. Let's call it privacy at the base layer. Monero has privacy at the base layer. Some people are suggesting that Bitcoin should implement privacy at the base layer. Some people are saying they'll implement Mimblewimble privacy at the base layer. From what you said about Monero, I'm guessing that you don't think there should be privacy at Bitcoin's base layer.
It's not about should, it's about this problem. So there is one short-term problem, is that any solution we have now for having strong privacy at the base layer also has a lot of very, very difficult also brings a lot of difficult trade-offs. So, okay, you are getting privacy, but you are giving up scalability big way, because the ring signatures are big and confidential transactions, they are big. So that will make the contrast between block space cost and node validation cost, even they will make it even worse. So the problem is that it's making scalability worse. The second problem, and this is typical of the base layer obfuscation solution. While Lightning, for example, is giving a better privacy solution that also helps with scalability, because the concept of Lightning or a script or a taproot or this kind of solution is that you don't use the blockchain for everything. You put on the blockchain only the fewer amount of information you can. So everybody has the information, but you use the blockchain the less you can. While obfuscation means that you give the information to every node forever, but you obfuscate cryptographically the information. And the first problem is that it creates a problem of scalability, a huge problem of scalability. And I think that if Monero had right now the same usage of Bitcoin, the cost either in fees or in centralization will destroy the project probably. And the second cost is security. Like in Bitcoin, we can have a strong security against. I mean, there was the inflation bug in Bitcoin, unfortunately, a few months ago. And if that was to be exploited, we will immediately know when the inflation and where the inflation happened. In Monero, that's not the case. So you are giving up a lot of scalability, and you are giving up some security. That's the same for Mimblewimble. So the thing is that these things could be mitigated in the future. Maybe right now, the kind of ring signatures we have now, the kind of confidential transaction we have now with bulletproofs, they are just at the beginning. But maybe in 20 years we will have such kind of evolution that we will have like a range proof based on different cryptographic assumptions. So maybe we will get to a point where we can put privacy at the base layer without giving up too much scalability and too much security. But the second problem is that the more Bitcoin goes on and on, the more it's necessary that it becomes difficult and more difficult to change, because otherwise there will be always people trying to change it and try to use social attack vectors to change it, governments or corporations. So we need stability of the protocol at a certain point at the base layer. So right now where probably right now we could change Bitcoin in order to put this kind of features, but this kind of feature are not ready because they damage security and scalability. Eventually, this kind of feature will be ready, but we will not be able to put them into Bitcoin anymore, because that will mean to change Bitcoin too much for too long, to be too fragile against changes. So for this reason, many Bitcoin developers don't agree with me. Like, I mean, I'm not even a developer. Serious Bitcoin people don't agree with me. Like Adam Beck, he thinks that confidential transaction will get into Bitcoin. Maybe they will get into Bitcoin with some kind of sidechain like mechanism. Like you save the base layer as it is, and you opt in a new layer of fundamental privacy, like extension block with Mimblewimble, for example. Mimblewimble design is beautiful, and a lot of, even if it's risky, but it's beautiful, and a lot of things are looking forward for Mimblewimble as a Bitcoin extension block, which means that you take a Bitcoin, you put it in this kind of, let's call it almost sidechain, which is an extension block, and it goes Mimblewimble in this extension block, and then it can come out. But even that will take a while. So I think that maybe we will have something like that in an extension block eventually.
So the Mimblewimble technology is better than the Zcash and Monero?
I think it is, because there are three different kind of things. Monero is using realistic, straight to the point, pragmatical solutions that are ready on the market right now to do some things, and they are doing that responsibly. Mimblewimble is more like is still more like some kind of dream, but it's not better from the practical point of view, but from the design point of view, the elegance of Mimblewimble, where you use the binding keys and the hiding keys together. I mean, if you read the description of Mimblewimble and you get to understand it a little bit, I consider it aesthetically beautiful. It's super smart. But Zcash is something, even I think Zcash is a very bad take on privacy, because they are using a general purpose zero knowledge proof mechanism, which is super difficult to scale and super difficult to keep secure with trusted setup. When what you need is actually is not general purpose. You need something specific to hide amounts and hide senders, basically. And also the way Zcash has been done is, I think, is very problematic. Like there is a one United States for-profit company which is keeping all the developer fees, and they are copywriting the logo, so it's not really a typical open source license. And privacy is opt-in. That means, and very expensive. That means that a lot of people, they think they're using privacy with Zcash, they're getting privacy, but they are not, because they're just using a normal T transaction and not a shielded transaction. So a lot of people using Zcash now, they think they are private, and they are way less private than Bitcoin because of the smaller unlimited set. And even if somebody uses the shielded transaction, the fact that nobody uses them, or very few people uses them, makes the unlimited set of people using them super small. So yes, you use the shielded transaction, but it's only 5 of you using them, so your unlimited set is irrelevant. So I think that Monero is a great pragmatical experiment. Zcash, in my opinion, is a very bad take on the privacy thing, and Mimblewimble is a beautiful dream of great mathematical elegance.
Wow, there's your complete answer on the privacy coins. Pound that like button. And wow, who would have guessed we were going to talk about Mimblewimble with Giacomo? That's a rarity. Okay, here's a question. This is going to be the end of the show. I just sent another question here. Would like to someone sent this in the chat. What's it say here? Would like to hear Giacomo's thoughts on Bitcoin inflation through issuing paper receipts when Bitcoin is deposited at third-party custodians.
Yeah. Yeah, this is a very good question. This is basically Bitcoin fractional reserve, basically. So if you have custodians, these custodians can claim that they have more Bitcoin than they do, and then they create a fractional reserve. And in a way, that's inflation. I mean, that's there are a lot of people that will fight about calling that inflation or not. But basically, it could be equivalent. It's monetary, it's debt expansion that could have the same effect of monetary expansion. So can you avoid that? No. Can this happen? Yes. I have two reasons why I think that the fractional reserve expansion in Bitcoin will never be as serious as it was in with the gold standard, and as it is right now with the baseless fiat money. And the two reasons are these. The first reason is that auditing gold in a caveau is very difficult. Auditing Bitcoin with cryptographic proof of reserve is easier. So ask for your custodian to audit fiat money is basically impossible. Asking them to audit gold is difficult. Asking them to audit Bitcoin is easy. So and there could be very smart way to do proof of reserve in a in a technical, very advanced and certain way. So if your custodian is not going to prove you that they are not doing fractional reserve, I think that's a red flag that most of the market will understand. Second, settlement is faster. So if you want to settle gold in a central bank, I mean, Germany is still waiting for their gold from the Federal Reserve. So it takes 40 years or something like that. While with Bitcoin, even if Bitcoin base layer is going to be more expensive and more slow, still probably in a couple of days with a few dollars, you will have your collateral back. So there is no excuse to keep your collateral hidden from you forever. And I say two arguments, but there is a third argument which is very important. So I think that fractional reserves in a free market has a natural balance, has a natural limit in the bank run risk. So you can inflate the debt as you want, but then you will risk a bank run, and so your people, I mean your creditors, will come back to get the to redeem the promises, and the market will move to other banks that are using less fractional reserves. So there is a market mechanism to keep fractional reserve honest. What is the problem with the current monetary system? Is that when there is a bank run, the government come and they print legal tender money in order to bail out the banks that fail, and they basically confiscate money with taxation due to Orwellian surveillance on people. And so they confiscate taxes and they print money, and they use this money to bail out failed banks. So there is a huge incentives for moral hazard. There is a lot of fractional reserve, because if you don't fail, you get the interest, and if you fail, somebody will give you other people's money to bail you out. So this cannot work in the hyper Bitcoinized world, because in the hyper Bitcoinized world, Federal Reserve, they can print, but liquidity will just flow away to Bitcoin, so they cannot really print anymore, and they can tax people. But when your financial privacy is very, very high, taxation cannot get to crazy levels, because the market will just refuse to pay if it's at crazy levels. So I think that Bitcoin will make the governments incapable of bailing out fractional reserve excesses. And so fractional reserves is possible, but it will be back to be limited and balanced by bank run risk.
I love it. Giacomo is here fighting the financialization fractional reserve FUD. And dudes, pound that like button if you love that I only had one guest on this Week in Bitcoin show, because baby, we needed all that time. We gave him the spotlight, and he rocked the world there, Giacomo. So I'm going to leave you with the final thoughts. Anything to add? Anything you wanted to say? I thank you so much for giving it your all today and being here.
Thanks to you. So nothing special to say, except that I will be on the 16th in Bratislava for a very difficult presentation, which is trying to debunking myths about Bitcoin and quantum computing, which is another kind of FUD that I want to address. I want to try to address. It will be very challenging. And if you want to take a look at my Twitter on the presentation about Lightning, I think it can be interesting to understand the different mood. And yeah, I think that's all. And in September we will see each other in Balticon Badger, where I will give a very strange kind of presentation. And and I will give the community updates about my experiment of last year about the B Foundation. I mean, we don't still know if this is a post-mortem or not, but it may be. We faced many difficulties that we didn't expect. So in September in Riga, I will give my final thoughts on this year of B Foundation experiment.
Wait, now this talk that's coming up about quantum FUD, dude, if you pull this off, we can just link to that every time we get some wacko in the chat saying, well, quantum will destroy Bitcoin, I can't buy it. I'll just link to that. So dude, that's a huge presentation you got coming up.
Hopefully, I studied a little bit of quantum physics when I was getting my degree in theoretical physics. So, but still, to make it simple and understandable and compact in one presentation will be a big challenge. I don't know if I can make it. I will try.
Well, I wish you luck on that. That's coming with the 16th. It's going to be in Bratislava, you said?
Yeah, Bratislava, Parallelna Polis, the new twin of the Parallelna Polis of Prague in Bratislava. And yeah, it will be the evening of the 16th.
I mean, that's in 4 days. I hope you could do it. And I had no idea you have a degree in theoretical field physics.
Yeah.
Woo! Pound that like button for having smart guests on this show. Best guests in the space are here. I bring them to you every Friday is the This Week in Bitcoin show. Sometimes we have 1, 2, 3, 4, who knows? But today's was awesome. Giacomo, thank you very much. Everyone, pound that like button. Bang that bell button if you need a reminder when we go live. Again, I do a new show here every day. The guests are on Friday, and then sometimes we have guests on other days too. Saturday, Beyond Bitcoin show. Tune in tomorrow. It'll be tomorrow afternoon in the United States, tomorrow night where I am in Israel. So again, thank you, everybody. I'm Adam Meister, the Bitcoin Meister, Disrupt Meister. Remember, subscribe to this channel, like this video, share this video. Shabbat Shalom. Bye-bye, everyone. See ya tomorrow. Bye.